Welcome to CSI Iowa. I'm your host, Bob Monserrat, Matt Monserrat in the production booth. Tonight, I have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about domestic violence. And every time you turn on the news, you hear quite a bit of domestic violence that takes place. And even recently here, we had another recent case, and it gets into the news. And it's just a terrible thing that we have to deal with, and many times people don't really have the answers. And when the law gets involved in it, many times the people that are the abusers break the law, and they have no problem getting past it and do damage to a lot of families. And so my guest tonight is Sheila Lynch, and Sheila has a story involving domestic abuse that involved her daughter, and she's here tonight to talk about domestic abuse, talk about some about her daughter and her case. And so, Sheila, welcome to CSI Iowa.
Thank you.
I guess my question to you is that did you think much about or deal much with domestic abuse before it happened to hit your family?
I was aware of it, but it hadn't affected me personally until I found out that my daughter was dealing with it.
And so what about your background? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm an Air Force brat. I'm originally from Texas. I met and married my husband, moved up to Iowa. We had our 4 kids up here in Iowa. And then I moved back to Texas. And 3 of my kids out of the 4 graduated up here at Iowa State. And my oldest daughter graduated from University of Texas in Austin. I have my degree in management science, very close to a minor in psychology. And today I work for the Ames School District. I'm the assistant secretary to the facilities manager. I live in Nevada. I moved up here from Texas the year after my daughter was killed. My house was for sale at the time everything was going on, but I didn't get to sell it till about 6 months later.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Now, did you live in Austin?
I lived in Kerrville, which is a smaller town, about 2 hours from Austin. It's in the middle of the Texas Hill Country.
Okay, because I was going to say I have 2 daughters that live,
Oh.
and a granddaughter that live in Austin.
My oldest daughter and her little girl are in Austin right
okay.
now. Yeah.
Okay. And so now, though, since that tragic events that took place, you speak quite a bit on domestic violence. Is that correct?
I do as often as I can. Going through everything with TereseAnn, after we found out what was going on, getting her away from him for the month that she had, and then him killing her and everything that went on, opened my eyes to so many needs for support that just aren't there.
Yeah. Now, TereseAnn, your daughter, who was murdered by it was her husband at the time.
Yes, she was divorcing him. Yeah.
And now she was in the military.
Yes, she was a member of the Iowa Air National Guard. She rose to the rank of tech sergeant. She was very proud of that. She was deployed 3 times overseas. The last deployment was in Iraq. She was very proud of serving in the military, and it's one of the things that surprise people when they find out that she was dealing with domestic violence.
Now, when did you find out about what she was dealing with?
Oh, I didn't find out how bad it was until approximately a month before he killed her. We knew he was controlling. She had stopped communicating with her family and her friends, and I think we kept finding excuses for that. She was a new mother and a new bride, and that's the excuses that we gave it. But I found out because I texted her, and we were going to talk over lunch, and she never answered me. And when I called, apparently her Randy found out, and she was punished for us talking. And the way I found out what was going on, she called me the next day at work and was begging me not to ever call her or text her at all unless she texted me first, because she was getting in trouble for it. And that opened the door to the conversation about the abuse.
Okay, so this was happening, but she didn't really let it out to
No, no, she hid it
you. Was this
so
because
well.
of his threats to her?
Oh, yes. She was petrified, more for her family and her little boy than she was for herself. He told her if she told anyone what was going on, that he would kill them. And she told me, she said, Mom, I stood up to him and I told him my family will do anything for me. And he said, why don't you call your father and your brother and have them come over here and I'll kill them right in front of you. You could watch me do it. And she was so scared of other people being hurt. She kept everything to herself until I had her talk to me. And the whole time she's talking to me, she made me promise over and over and over that I would not tell anybody else whatsoever, no one, because she didn't know how they would react. And she said, Mom, if they call Randy and say, leave my daughter alone, he'll kill me. So she was petrified of the word getting to the wrong person that would react, and then it would be the end of it. So.
And this was going on for how long before you knew it?
It had been going on for at least, probably going on a year, because he was abusive to her before they married, and she still married him. That's another thing that's hard to understand, but if you don't understand the psychology behind the abuser, the way they manipulate, the way they use their threats, how scared the victim is, it's hard to understand. But I do have an analogy that I've used before that, if you don't mind, I'd like to say.
Go ahead.
The victim is so fearful. My daughter described it as being on the edge of a cliff, and you can't jump off, but you can't go back either. And the analogy I came up with is, if you imagine yourself walking to work every day, you pass the same buildings every day on your way to work. One day on the way to work, you look up and there's a woman standing on the railing of a balcony 8 stories up. There's a crowd underneath the building thinking, oh my gosh, is she going to jump? Is she okay? Somebody help her, what can we do? They call the police. The police rescue this woman off the balcony, and everybody breathes a joint sigh of relief. Oh, thank God, she's okay. And then a week later, the woman's on the balcony again. The crowd gets smaller. A couple days go by. Every 2 days, every 3 days, that woman's up on the balcony again. Pretty soon, that crowd underneath the balcony gets less and less and less until there isn't anybody watching her. In fact, people are saying, oh, for Pete's sake, why don't you just jump already? Get it over with. It gets to the point that you're walking to work, you see her, someone else coming up new says, oh my gosh, there's a woman up there. You might say, oh, don't worry about it, she does it all the time. What people don't understand is that woman on the railing of that balcony is not by herself. In the shadows behind her, where no one can see, there's a man. And he has a gun, or he has a baseball bat, or he has his fists, or he has the children. And he's telling her, you're going to stay out on that balcony rail as long as I want you to. Because if you get off that balcony rail, I'm going to punish you. You're going to wish you hadn't. And then sometimes he'll say, oh, go ahead, get down, it's okay. So that lady gets down off that balcony rail and comes back, and he punishes her anyway. So even when he tells her, it's okay, you can get down now, she's not sure that she can get down without being punished. And then she gets to the point where, you know what, I would just as soon jump. I'm just going to jump. He says, all right, yeah, go ahead and jump. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to punish your father. I'm going to get your mother. I'm going to get our children. I'm going to punish them just like I punished you, and it's going to be your fault because you jumped. So that woman on the balcony, 8 stories up, she can't jump. She can't turn around and go back. She's stuck on that balcony. And when she looks down, and the crowd of what she thought was support gets smaller and smaller and smaller until there's nobody for support. Can you imagine what that woman feels like?
No.
It's a nightmare to live. It's a nightmare to live in that situation. And that's what my daughter was putting up with.
And yet, you didn't know till later
No.
on.
She kept it very secret because he warned her, tell anybody, I'll kill him, I'll get him. Try to leave me, I'll take Levi. You'll never see him again, you won't know where he is. And she believed it. Because other threats that he told her he'd do, he followed through.
Now, in this situation, was it more verbal than physical?
Oh gosh, no.
It was both.
It was very, very, very much physical abuse. When we got her away from him, her aunt helped her go to the doctor and they took photographs. She had rug burns on all different parts of her body from being dragged across the carpet. She had huge bruises. She had patches of hair missing from being thrown around the room by her hair only. She had one ear that was messed up, and people at work had noticed that, and she made excuses. He was very careful. Most of what he did was shoulder level and lower so that it would not be noticeable. If it was noticeable, he would keep her up at night and have her repeat over and over and over the story that she was going to tell anybody that asked her about it.
Okay, and so when that was recorded, because it had to be, you had to go to a hospital, have them check her out and photograph and do all of that. Is this what led to the restraining order, or is there more to it before that?
No, she took out the protective order the day that her brother helped her leave the apartment and put Levi in a safe place. He took her to the courthouse to get the protective order. The photographs were later. She told the judge what had been going on. She told the judge about the abuse and how scared she was of what he would do. And they put out a temporary protective order, and then she had to go back to court a little bit later to make it a real protective order.
Now, was she told what that meant?
The protective order?
Yeah.
She was told that it was supposed to keep Randy from approaching her or from being around her. It didn't work, and I know she was scared anyway. Because he even told her, Randy told her, I've had protective orders before, it didn't stop me, it's not going to stop me now. And he was right.
Right. But that's probably something, in a sense, she probably had some relief that there was something she could do.
Oh, yes.
But not realizing that it really didn't mean anything to him. She said she counted her blessings every day that she had somewhere to go, that her and Levi had a place to stay and be safe. And at that point, we didn't think he knew where it was because it was an address that he'd never gone to, he wasn't familiar with. We were not aware that he was following her at that point. So we thought she was in a place that he did not know where she was. But realistically, she went to the daycare every day with Levi. She went to work every day. So realistically, it wouldn't be hard for him to find out. And he did.
And he did.
And so, okay, so she had a false sense of security, or some security.
Some security, but she was still petrified.
Sure.
She was still scared. What we arranged between the two of us, every morning when she went to daycare and work, she talked to me on the phone the whole entire time until she got to work inside her office.
That way, if she saw anything or experienced, she could tell you.
And one time she thought she saw his car blocking her car at daycare. And she was frantic. And I kept saying, go back in, go back in, go back in. And she said, and she kept walking to her car. And I said, TereseAnn Marie, turn around and go back in there. And she said it turned out it wasn't. It wasn't his car. And of course, we found out later he was using several different cars to follow her, so there would be no way to track what he was doing anyway.
I guess, my question is this typical behavior of an abuser or an abusive, controlling, manipulative person?
Yes. In fact, when I did my research, they said over 85% of the time that a victim separates themselves from the abuser, the violence escalates because the abuser manipulates solely for the purpose of having control. And when the victim leaves, he has no control. And so the abuser will do anything and everything they can do to get their control back over the victim. So it's very, very common. Stalking, phone calls.
Now, is this always one way, meaning male to female, or is it ever the other?
No, it's across the board. When I usually say when I'm talking, I will say he and she because it's easier. The majority of the time, it is a man abusing a woman, but it goes across the board. It's also a woman abusing a man. With gay couples, it's abuse towards them. It cuts all the way across the board. It's just that the majority is a man abusing a woman.
And the abuse for a woman toward a man, is it more or the same, emotional or physical, or
the same?
It's the same.
It can be all of the above, and it's the psychology behind it is kind of interesting. With a woman, usually she's smaller, not as physically capable, and so you can understand the fear. When it's a woman abusing a man, a lot of it is the ego and the pride, and how is this man supposed to report this woman that's abusing him? But it gets very physical, very physical.
I think most people can't even imagine that it would go from female to male.
Yeah, it's across the board. It's a community problem. Domestic violence. It's everywhere. People don't realize it, but it is.
And I know even for law enforcement, domestic violence is one of the most difficult things to respond to as law enforcement, because it's people's tempers are up, people are very upset, and usually, someone is hurt or killed in those situations. We need to take a break now, and then we'll come back and continue here. We've been speaking to Sheila Lynch, who is the mother of TereseAnn Lynch, who was brutally murdered 3 years ago in Des Moines, and we're learning about domestic violence. So you're watching CSI Iowa on webcast1live.com, and we'll be back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
At the BrownellsPoliceStore.com, we specialize in a full line of duty gear for military, law enforcement, and security professionals. PoliceStore.com has a great selection of high-quality and dependable police supplies, all backed by Brownell's 100% unconditional lifetime guarantee. The Brownells Training Group offers firearms training for military, police, professional security, and qualified citizens taught by professionals who are recognized for their knowledge and real experience. Check us out today at PoliceStore.com/CSI.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, listen, watch, chat. This is Webcast One Live. Programs on webcast1live.com are brought to you in part by KDC Builders, building custom homes for how you live. KDC will take your dreams and turn them into reality. Go to our website, kdcbuilt.com. or call Hannah Inman at 515-975-9990. And Tom Coates and ConsumerCreditOfAmerica.com. Are you overwhelmed with mounted credit card debt and feel there's no way out? Well, there is. Call 1-800-955-5765 for Consumer Credit of America. That's ccofamerica.com.
Welcome back to CSI Iowa. Tonight's show, we're dealing with domestic violence, and my guest is Sheila Lynch, the mother of TereseAnn Lynch, and I'm pronouncing that right, correct?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure I'm saying that right, who was a victim of domestic abuse 3 years ago here in Des Moines, and it was all over the news, a terrible situation, and it's amazing that so much of this goes on, and I think that the only way people really are aware of it is if it's happening to themselves or their family members, or they see it on the news. Mm-hmm. And if that's not the case, then you're not going to understand that or know much about that. But, since it happened to your daughter, then one of the things is you want to learn as much as you could about it, correct?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that it would be kind of, in a sense, a tribute to your daughter, too.
Yes. I used to wish all the time that I could go back and do things differently with her. I can't do that. So instead, I want to help as many victims as I can. What I want to do is shine the light on this domestic violence. People don't understand how common it is, mm-hmm. and how much the victims need their support so badly.
How knowing what you know now and what you did then, how could you have done things differently?
Oh.
Is that something that, hindsight is always 20/20. You look
Yes.
back and say, well, if I only did this and this and this. But so many of times we say that about a lot of situations, but sometimes it happens and you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or you're ignorant as to what you could do. Mm. And, obviously you would not want any of this to ever happen, and you'd want the results to be good. So, and I'm not in any way trying to be condemning that you did something wrong, but if this is happening to someone now, what avenue or what can they do? How can they do things differently?
Well, after TereseAnn's murder, they did pass a new law about weapons and people with protective orders. So that will help a lot. In TereseAnn's case, Randy would call us and tell us that he had the gun ready to use. And when we called the sheriff's department, they told us to call the Urbandale police. And then when we called the Urbandale police, they said, no, you really need to call the sheriff. So the gun was never taken from Randy, even though he told us it's loaded, it's ready, it's waiting, I'm going to use it. Since TereseAnn's murder, they did pass a new law. So when there is someone that has a protective order against them, all weapons are confiscated. And they have a unit per county, I believe, that is responsible for doing that. So that's one thing that has changed.
Okay, and is that something where law enforcement goes to your home and confiscates? Or
yes, the person who has the protective order against them, the offender, yes.
Okay.
They will go and demand all weapons. And should the weapons not be turned over, or should they know of a second party that the weapons were given to, that second party can be given a fine or even jail time, as well as the offender. So that was not in place before, and it is now. So
do you think that came as a result of this
Yes,
specific case?
The governor told us, yeah.
Okay.
It was in TereseAnn's memory.
Oh, all right.
It was very quickly afterwards, too. She was killed in November, and I believe it was passed in February, which is very fast. We got petitions going everywhere, and I like to think that our petitions helped get it passed.
Right, and so that is a law that should help Now, it's not going to be 100%
No.
because we just heard it on TV.
Yes.
This guy went out and bought a gun after
Yes.
he turned in his guns. So there's still, holes in some
yeah.
of these situations. Is there anything else that you know of that you've learned that someone might be able to do?
What I would love to see happen. There's 17 states that have it in place, and it's a GPS ankle bracelet that the offender wears. The judge makes the decision: is the offender perceived as dangerous enough that this needs to be done? But the offender wears the ankle bracelet. The victim has a receiver, and if the offender comes within the distance that he's not supposed to, the victim is notified and the police are notified. And then immediately the victim is called. This is 911. Are you okay? Where's your location? And they can say that they're safe. They can say that they're not. Whatever's going on, and the police can be immediately dispatched. To me, it's one of those things I wish had been in place. My daughter walked out of the Target store into the parking lot. If she had had that receiver and Randy was wearing that ankle bracelet, TereseAnn would have been notified immediately. Oh my gosh, she's right here. She could have turned right back around and gone in that store.
Now,
and it could have prevented her from being kidnapped.
Okay, so for those that don't know or haven't followed the case, she was kidnapped out was that around Merle Hay Mall area?
Yes.
The Target there?
The Target, yes.
And she came out and he was waiting for her, and he was in a rental car?
Yes, he was in a rental car. He parked his car. He blocked her car with his and forced her into his car and fled the scene and went back to their apartment.
The apartment that he was in?
The apartment that he was in, the one that she had left a month before with the baby. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm just curious as to how did the police find out about this, because they responded.
Randy texted me and TereseAnn's brothers and several other family members that she was gonna be dead, that we'd never see her again. And I had the police. I was in Texas at the time, but I had the police on speed dial because I was scared for TereseAnn and I knew what was going on. So I called the police and told them that I had just received a text message and I had tried to call her and she wasn't answering her cell phone. Both of my sons called, also said, Mom, what's going on? And then I called the police about the text message, and then there were several people in Target parking lot that called 911.
Because they saw this happen.
Because they saw a woman, it looked like, being forced into a car. And so they dispatched, I think, fairly quickly to the Target parking lot. They found TereseAnn's car empty, her cell phone on the seat, and yeah.
And then there was a standoff, and
there was a standoff at the apartment. Mm-hmm. And Randy called my son, told him what he had done to TereseAnn, and then he called me and told me what he had done to her. Said that if I didn't believe him, I could call the police because he'd also shot and killed 2 police officers, which wasn't true, but that was his personality.
That was part of his control manipulation.
So,
so that's a pretty bad thing to do.
Yes.
To not only to do that, but then to inform.
Mm-hmm.
He
was bragging about it.
Yeah. And of course, you at that time you weren't sure until the police confirmed that.
Yes.
When they
I was watching it on the computer at my office at work.
This is from Texas.
In Texas.
Okay.
My coworkers heard me on the phone and trying to get TereseAnn to answer, calling the police. So they pulled it up on the internet, and I watched it live on the news when they arrested Randy and walked him out. But I didn't know what had happened for sure with TereseAnn till I called. The police themselves would not tell me. I called my former sister-in-law, and that's where TereseAnn had been living, and asked her, and they put a detective that was at their home on the phone, and he told me what had happened.
Okay, and I'm assuming maybe they didn't realize who you were because when you called in, because sometimes media people might do that for information.
Yeah.
And so they had to be careful.
They wanted to be sure that they were telling the right person the right news.
Right, exactly. I can't imagine any of this happening to my kids. I have kids too, and I can't even imagine what it's like. I think about the stress associated with it, the grief, and what it takes, and it's been 3 years, and I know that sometimes people may say the wrong things to you, may say things like, "Hey, it's been 3 years. It's been you ought to be over this," and the reality is that you never get over something like that.
No.
And so it's a matter of learning how to cope with those situations, and you won't know it unless you're the one that's there. Correct?
Correct. I know people don't mean to bring up the feelings that come up when they say things. I've done the same thing with others, and you don't understand what it's like until it happens. I've had people tell me, "Oh, at least you have 3 other kids." It's like, it's
right.
It's hard. I'm going to counseling, and it's helped tremendously. And I'm still in counseling because things come up in different ways.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and it's helped a lot. Putting effort into trying to help other victims helps a lot.
Have you been alongside others that have gone through this? Have you talked to other people that have lost their loved ones?
Yes.
Or are going through the situation beforehand?
Yes. In some of the speeches that I've given and some of the candlelight vigils I've gone to, always that's what people want to do, is come up and share what they're going through. And it helps. It's so amazing because everyone goes through it in their own way, and no one person's experience is worse than another's because it's your experience. Mm-hmm. There's no way to make one better or one worse. It's your personal experience. So.
Right, and I'm assuming there are difficult times. For instance, holidays, birthdays, when you continue to think about.
Yes, in fact, this month is the anniversary of everything that was going on when we got her out. It was the last month she had to live, and then a year later it was the trial. The year after she was killed, the month of October, was the trial, and the anniversaries, it's amazing how the anniversaries reflect. I mean, Randy was found guilty and sentenced on November 12th, 2010, 1 year and 1 day after he killed her. And the only reason it was the day later was because Veterans Day, the courthouse wasn't open.
Wow.
Because it was Veterans Day, so it's all mirrored each other. And it is hard. Her birthday's Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, and so there's a lot of hard times. Or when Levi does something wonderful.
And Levi is her son.
Yes.
And he's 3?
He's 3.5, over 3.5 now. Mm-hmm. Has her blue eyes, has her smile, has her feistiness. He has her spunk. He's doing very, very well. And
I'm sure that he's reminded of his mom.
Oh, yes. He knows that he has a mommy in heaven is what he tells people, that his mommy, his Mama T, is in heaven, and she was in the Army, and he's very proud of her. He has pictures of her and stories, and we're hoping down the road when he asks questions that we can all answer his questions, and he'll be okay.
Does he know that she's gone?
He knows that she's gone. Mm-hmm. She's in heaven now. Okay. She's an angel, is what he says. But he does not know how or why. Okay. And that'll come up when he gets older. Mm-hmm. And we're hoping that we'll just, with the counselor's help, we'll answer his questions.
Okay. Well, we need to take another break, and we've been talking to Sheila Lynch, mother of TereseAnn Lynch, and we've been talking about domestic abuse, and we'll get into more of that and more of what people can do that are experiencing that. But you're watching CSI Iowa, Webcast One Live. This show will be posted on my Facebook site, which is CSI Iowa. Type that in a search bar, and it'll take you to the shows. So we'll be back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
At the BrownellsPoliceStore.com, we specialize in a full line of duty gear for military, law enforcement, and security professionals. PoliceStore.com has a great selection of high-quality and dependable police supplies, all backed by Brownell's 100% unconditional lifetime guarantee. The Brownells Training Group offers firearms training for military, police, professional security, and qualified citizens taught by professionals who are recognized for their knowledge and real experience. Check us out today at PoliceStore.com/CSI.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, listen, watch, chat. This is Webcast One Live. Programs on webcastonelive.com are brought to you in part by KDC Builders, building custom homes for how you live. KDC will take your dreams and turn them into reality. Go to our website, kdcbuilt.com, or call Hannah Inman at 515-975-9990. And Tom Coates and ConsumerCreditOfAmerica.com. Are you overwhelmed with mounted credit card debt and feel there's no way out? Well, there is. Call 1-800-955-5765 for Consumer Credit of America. That's ccofamerica.com.
Welcome back to CSI Iowa. My guest tonight is Sheila Lynch, and we're talking about domestic abuse and also her daughter's case, TereseAnn Lynch, that was murdered, would be 3 years ago, actually, right during this time. And it was a very tragic event. And we were talking earlier about how it's a control and manipulation thing, and it is physical.
Yes.
People are beaten, so the abuse is not only emotional or verbal, but it's also physical. And you're also mentioning how your daughter was afraid to do anything, to even reach out to help or say anything for fear that more violence would come her way. And actually, the reality was it did.
It did.
So her fears actually came to pass.
Yes.
And we also talked about the fact that now, does our state have the bracelet or the ankle thing?
Iowa does not.
There are some states, though, that
There
do
are
that?
17 states that have it.
Okay, and so is this this is probably something that someone, I'm assuming, would try to push for.
Yes.
You're one of those pushers?
Oh, yes. I would love to have that process. It's an awesome system, and the states that have it have a way to pay for it, because one of the first things that come up, well, how are we going to pay for it? The taxpayers are already burdened. But there are ways to use the judicial system and the offenders, the domestic abuse offenders, that pay for it with their property, with other things that are confiscated when they're put in jail. There are ways to pay for it. It's an awesome system, and it would save a lot of lives.
Now,
in my opinion.
Is there a way that do you have to collect signatures, or how do you go about trying to, push this through legislation?
Well, first you have to get it even to make the point. when I spoke at the governor's conference, I talked to some people that would like to look at that. So it's very preliminary, but if you get enough interest, enough signatures, enough, I guess, legislatures that will even look at it, then you can try to push it through the door. It's a process, and it takes a lot of time.
It does. It does. I think it helps that once they're aware of it, then it's something that you can keep bringing up
Yes.
all the time. And the other thing you said was being able to confiscate any kind of weapons
Yes.
that they might have. I'm assuming firearms is what they're
Firearms
talking about.
are, yes, firearms mostly. But
Yeah.
they will take large knives and things too. If
Okay,
if
so
it's,
other
it can be
potential-
considered a weapon, yes.
Okay. And I realize that that's not a guarantee, but it is a step.
It's a step.
Are there any other things that people or states may be doing, to protect those that are being abused?
One thing that my daughter was very lucky because she had somewhere to go, somewhere to live. But she also found herself paying the rent in the apartment that she left because Randy refused to pay it. And it was a burden on TereseAnn doing all of this on her own. There are some states that have what they call early lease termination, and the protective order will serve as proof of the domestic violence. The states that have that in place, the victim can go to the landlord and with the protective order showing that there's domestic violence occurring, can break her lease early and not have to pay, and then the offender is held responsible for the lease and not the victim. There's also lease bifurcation where they split the lease and the offender is told that he has to leave the premises. In my daughter's case, she would not have stayed in that apartment with the idea that he could come back, but that is an option. It gives the victim and their children a place to stay that can be considered safe. I think the biggest thing I think we need to support victims is just more education and more awareness on everybody's part. Ordinarily people don't realize what's going on until they hear it in the news. And it's everywhere. It's teachers, it's people you work with, it's your neighbors, it's your cousins, it's your sister, it's your daughter. And people aren't aware of how widespread it is. If we could educate people more so that the stereotype of a victim isn't so prevalent, I think victims would be more inclined to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Even with my daughter, when we got her out, I had some of my best friends in Texas tell me, well, now you need to get ready for when she goes back to him. It wasn't, what can we do to support you? What can we do to make sure she's safe? What can we do to encourage her to stay away? It was, Sheila, get ready because she's going to go back.
Did they say that because that's some of the common behavior?
It's common behavior, and it's also expected behavior. Because even I think I've spoken to different law enforcement people, and that's one of the frustrations. Because law enforcement will be called, they give warnings or they take the offender away, and then the victim moves back in.
And I'm wondering, is that because of finances? Because
a lot of it,
many
yes.
different reasons that
Yes.
that's the only place they have to go
Yes.
in certain situations.
It's financial is a lot of it, especially if there's children involved, because it's one thing to move yourself, but it's another thing to move you and your children. It's financial situation, it's support systems that aren't there. One of the biggest things that an offender does when he manipulates is isolate, isolate, isolate. TereseAnn stopped calling us, her family. She stopped calling her friends. We had family get-togethers, and she wasn't sure if she could make it. She was always the one organizing them. Isolation is a huge way to control the victim. Isolation prevents other people from knowing what's going on, and it also leaves the victim feeling like there's no one that they can turn to.
And are the victims ridiculed and put down and they're devalued?
Yes.
And
in fact, in my research, some of the things I found, the stereotypical description of a woman victim is that they don't have a job, They're not educated. They live in a lower income area. It's so stereotypical but that's what you automatically think. Oh yeah, you're going to see them. You know, it's not true. It's doctors. It's lawyers. It's my daughter herself. My daughter had her bachelor's degree from Iowa State. She was working for the Department of Human Services in Des Moines. She was well educated. She was in the Air Guard. She was in the. I mean, it's the stereotypical view is that they're irresponsible, but they're
Right.
not.
Right. You're right. I mean, sometimes people say, well, that's their lifestyle.
But it's not. It's the situation that has been put on them by the abuser.
Mm-hmm. And so they're, even in their own minds, they start maybe believing what is being told to them all the time, even though it's not true, but it's to devalue them.
Yes.
And so that they have no worth or self-worth.
They have no self-worth. They have no value and
no self-esteem.
And there's a reason that they're being hurt. They must deserve it. It's abusers are so good at their manipulation, at their chipping away. One of the things that struck me with TereseAnn when we got her out and when she started talking, because it took her a while before she wanted to tell me what he thinks he'd done. She would describe an event as an example, there was one time when he had warned her at work that when she came home, it was going to be bad because he'd had a bad day. So she was going to be punished. And she said she did all kinds of errands, but she ran out of things to do. She had to go home. And she was holding Levi in his little carrier and a sack of groceries. And when she opened the door and walked in, he punched her in the stomach. And she said she dropped the groceries and she held on for dear life to that carrier because Levi was in it. And she fell to her knees and she couldn't breathe. And when she was telling me about it, she said, I couldn't breathe, Mom. And I said, oh my God, TereseAnn, that he should never do that to you. And she said, oh no, Mom, I was okay. He just tapped me. And I said, he tapped you, but you couldn't breathe? Well, yeah. I said, you fell to your knees, TereseAnn, and you couldn't breathe. And it took her a while to realize how bad it was what he had done, because he had convinced her afterwards that it wasn't that bad. It's mind-boggling.
Right.
It's something that it's hard to understand, but it's the repetition of him telling her over and over and over that, oh, it's not so bad, not such a big deal. But I got her to repeat what he'd done until she got angry, and it was the anger that woke her up in some way. And she said, oh my God, Mom, he punched me. He punched me in the stomach and I couldn't breathe. He punched me and I couldn't breathe. And it was...
Because he put her in such a state that she was willing to accept that punishment.
Yes.
And it was okay because she didn't have much value.
Well, what she did, I think a lot of it, besides taking her own value away, I think she substituted other people's value for her own. So if he was punishing her, then maybe he wouldn't punish Levi, or maybe he wouldn't get her brother, or maybe he wouldn't get me, because I kept trying to talk her into having me fly up to Iowa, and she said no. We had plans for Thanksgiving, and I'd already got my ticket. So she said, oh, no, you have to come up at Thanksgiving. And we had such an awesome Thanksgiving planned. And I finally said, oh, TereseAnn, I really need to get up there. And she said, Mom, he'll get you. And that's what was behind it. That she was afraid. And I said, TereseAnn, we've got you away. And she said, Mom, he'll get you. I know he'll get you.
So as you were saying, that she was trying to be a substitute for anyone else.
For anyone else that might be hurt. I mean, it was like, if she could be strong enough to put up with it, then maybe the other people he told her he would get, maybe he wouldn't.
And I also understand that he never was apologetic in any way. He was never He just kept up his...
Oh, it was unreal during the trial. He would turn around and wink at us. He said that, he tried to say that he hadn't done it, of course, but when it was proven that he did, it was her fault, if she just would have let him see Levi anytime he wanted to instead of the visitations they set up, and it was unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal. He said he would do it again, but next time he'd get away with it. It was just, I've never heard of anything like that.
And the judge never really heard anything like that either, correct?
Oh, the judge was so awesome. We were so blessed to have him see underneath for what Randy really was like.
Mm-hmm.
To have him recognize it. I think everybody in the courtroom did. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to disguise it when he started talking. It was just unreal. He had absolutely no remorse. Said he'd do it again. Said that he would get Levi from us. We'd never see Levi. It was unreal.
I guess my question is, what do you think of him? I mean, I can understand, but how do you deal with the fact that he's still with us?
Well, in the beginning, I had a tremendous amount of anger, and I thought that I could punish him myself, but realistically, I wouldn't have. He is stuck in a place now. He'll never leave. He's in maximum security, which means he has approximately an hour out of his cell a day. If there could be any worse punishment for him, I don't know what it would be. He was an outside person. I mean, he was very seldom in the apartment. He was always fishing this, boating that, motorcycle this. And the weekend, in fact, that I persuaded TereseAnn to leave, he was at a softball tournament, and that's why we talked practically 24/7 on the phone, planning how we were going to get her away from him. And he's being punished. I honestly wish he would know what he did, but I don't think he will. I don't think it's in his personality to even realize what he did, but he'll never get out. He'll never hurt anyone again. And that's the best I can hope for.
Sure. Is it within the realm of possibility to forgive somebody like that? And I'm saying that only as a release for you.
That's why I brought up the anger, because I don't have the anger like I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have forgiven him for the act, but I don't think I can forgive him for not caring about it.
Mm-hmm.
The act, I think he knew what he was doing. He's not so sick that he knew exactly what he was doing. He tried to hide it, but I've forgiven him for that. It's that he has no remorse, and that's what I can't forgive him for.
Yeah. And do you see it as a mental illness?
Oh, I do. I think it's a mental illness, but he's a sociopath, not a psychopath. Psychopath doesn't know the difference between right and wrong and just do what they want. Randy is a sociopath. He knew exactly what he was doing, well enough that he could hide what he was doing to TereseAnn in public, but just go full force in private. He knew it was wrong, otherwise he wouldn't have to hide it when he was around other people. He's a sociopath. I think he's missing that part of a person that looks beyond themselves. He has no empathy for other people. He has no caring for other people. And in that way, if I thought he was completely mentally ill, I would think he wouldn't need punished. But he knew what he was doing, and he chose to do it. And he chose to do it in the way he did it.
So some of the best thing is not to even think about him.
Yeah. And I most of the time now I don't. I used to think I saw him. It was just fearful. But now he's where he's supposed to be, and I prefer to think he's miserable. I don't know how he couldn't be.
Right. Yeah, he would be.
Yeah.
And you got a grandson that
Yes.
brings back. You can see your daughter.
Oh, he smiles just like TereseAnn, to the point when he's gone to market days and things, when the military, the Air National Guard, have tents set up. They look at him and they think, "Oh my gosh, is that TereseAnn's little boy?" Because he looks so much like her when he smiles. It's her in him every time he smiles. Those blue eyes.
Well, I appreciate you coming to
Thank you.
share a part of your life. I mean, a difficult part of your life and a good part of your life. You know,
Yeah.
for what is a positive thing that has motivated you to help other people that are going through this. Again, my guest is Sheila Lynch, and her daughter TereseAnn Lynch is who we've been talking about, and domestic abuse that is just so prevalent around the planet, really. I mean, it's not just localized to the U.S., but everywhere. And so I appreciate you giving us some ideas and some ways that people can help, and for people to be sensitive to those that are going through it, and to be helpful and supportive as best as it's possible. So thanks again.
Thank you.
You've been watching CSI Iowa. We do have the domestic violence hotline number posted there. It's 1-800-942-0333. And please call that number if there's any type of domestic violence that you're aware of. Pass it on to people that may need to do that. So again, thanks for watching CSI Iowa. We'll see you again. Good night.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
At the BrownellsPoliceStore.com, we specialize in a full line of duty gear for military, law enforcement, and security professionals. PoliceStore.com has a great selection of high-quality and dependable police supplies, all backed by Brownell's 100% unconditional lifetime guarantee. The Brownells Training Group offers firearms training for military, police, professional security, and qualified citizens taught by professionals who are recognized for their knowledge and real experience. Check us out today at PoliceStore.com/CSI.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.